They were supposed to return home. But what if, on the edge of victory, 2 Jedi vanished into the stars, never to be seen on Coruscant again? In the quiet before the storm, when the Force trembled and the stars held their breath, destiny cracked. 2 warriors, bonded by battle, shadowed by prophecy, turned from the path written in the Jedi Temple's stone. The Council waited. The Chancellor waited. But the Chosen and his brother-in-arms did not return, and so a ripple echoed through the fabric of fate. A darkness once buried began to rise unchecked. The balance long prophesied hung not in triumph, but in silence. Where the light was meant to reign, the shadows found new ground. Count Dooku had fallen by their blades. But what if that moment, meant to mark the end of war, became the seed of an unseen rebellion? What if Anakin never stood before the Council again? What if Obi-Wan never warned Padme, never saw Mustafar, never heard the screams? This is not the tale told in Holocron. This is the forgotten path, where loyalty bends, love lingers, and the Force weeps in silence. This is the galaxy as it might have been, a single choice unmade, a future untold. What if Anakin and Obi-Wan didn't return to Coruscant? The Force remembers. And now, so will you. They had slain the Sith Lord. Count Dooku's body lay cold aboard the invisible hand, his betrayal silenced by the very blade of the Chosen One. The galaxy should have exhaled in relief. But the Force did not, for in that moment of decisive victory, a fracture was born not in the war, but in destiny itself. Anakin Skywalker stood at a precipice, the blood of Dooku still hot upon his saber. Obi-Wan Kenobi, battered but breathing, knew the mission was incomplete, but somewhere between duty and instinct, a choice was made. They didn't return. No Senate. No Chancellor. No Council. No orders. The transmission to Coruscant was never sent. The Jedi shuttle instead vanished into hyperspace, its trajectory lost in the labyrinth of the mid-rim. Whispers would call it desertion, but the truth was deeper, darker. Anakin had felt something beyond orders, beyond war. A shadow that would only grow if they obeyed. And Obi-Wan, always the loyal knight, looked into his brother's eyes and saw not madness, but clarity. They were not running from the Republic. They were running toward something else, something the Force demanded they face. Alone, on Coruscant, chaos bloomed. The Council waited for 2 of its finest. Chancellor Palpatine, rescued but abandoned, returned alone, rescued by clone medics who found him adrift in a shattered command ship. He spoke little of what occurred, cloaking the truth beneath layers of lies. He painted Anakin as unstable, Obi-Wan as seduced by war. He whispered doubt into the ears of the Council. The seeds of fear were sown, and fear always finds fertile soil across the stars. Anakin and Obi-Wan wandered from desolate moons to forgotten temples. They followed echoes in the Force. Ancient holocrons spoke of destinies never fulfilled. Visions clouded their minds, visions of fire, betrayal, of Padme crying out in pain. They saw Coruscant drenched in ash. Clones turning their rifles on Jedi. Youngl, the temple burning, Sidious rising. And yet, none of it had happened. Not yet, but the future was pressing down on them, its weight growing with each breath. The Force was warning them, and with every world they visited, every secret uncovered, it became clear, returning to Coruscant would seal it. So they chose exile. Not as cowards, but as guardians. Still, the galaxy did not wait. The Clone Wars raged on, with Grievous still at large, and Dooku dead. The Separatist command fractured, but the Republic faltered without its 2 champions. General Kenobi missing. Anakin Skywalker wanted. Whispers filled the Senate, and in Palpatine's silence, fear became law. Martial codes expanded, emergency powers intensified. The Republic slid toward darkness, without a shot being fired. And Padme, Was alone. She returned to Naboo under watch. Her heart ached with uncertainty. No word. No message, only silence. She carried within her a secret, the stirrings of new life. Twins. Unspoken, unseen. And in her dreams, Anakin called to her. Not in torment, but in warning. She saw the face of the Chancellor. Not kind, not gentle, but monstrous, pale, twisted by power. She returned to Coruscant, and beneath her senator's robes, she became a seeker, a rebel. Led by the hope that the man she loved had not turned his back on the galaxy, but was trying to save it in ways the Council never would. Yoda sensed the disturbance. Deep within the temple, the Grand Master meditated on ripples that danced through the Force. The future had become impossible to see. The dark side was no longer creeping, it was surging. The absence of Skywalker had unbalanced the current. And Obi-Wan. His silence was a wound in the Jedi's soul. Mace Windu grew restless. The Council debated endless hours. Suspicion feeding suspicion. Who do we trust? Where do loyalties lie? Even among the Jedi, cracks appeared. Then came the message, a broadcast. Faint. Encrypted. From Anakin, a warning and a plea. The Chancellor is the Sith Lord. He orchestrated both sides of the war. He plans to destroy the Jedi and reshape the Republic. And then silence. Across the stars, Anakin stood with his hood drawn, facing a ruinous battlefield. He no longer wore the Jedi robes. He was not Sith. He was not Jedi. He was something else. The call reached only one mind in full. Padma's. She followed his trail. She left Coruscant, disguised, hunted, and burning with the will to find her husband. To warn him. To save him. Or be saved by him. But she was not the only one listening. Palpatine smiled, for the trap was already closing. In the shadows of Mustafar, where ancient Sith temples lay buried beneath molten stone, Darth Sidious prepared his next move. Without Skywalker to corrupt from within, he turned his gaze elsewhere. The clones were ready. Order 66, a command carved into their DNA, awaited only a breath. But something had changed. The executioners hesitated. The Force resisted. And in that hesitation, thousands were spared. Not all. But many. The Jedi Temple still burned. But the galaxy did not fall in a single night, because one piece was missing. The chosen one. And in his absence, fate stuttered. Obi-Wan returned first. Alone. Hooded. Weathered. But not broken. He entered the temple in secret, finding only the ruins and the few who had survived. Younglings hidden in catacombs. Jedi in exile. Hope flickering. He did not speak of Anakin, only of choices, of visions, of truths the Council had long buried. He told them, the Jedi Order as it stood must die. And in its place, something new must rise. Not warriors, not generals, but guardians of balance. Some called it heresy, others followed him. Yoda, too, had vanished, but his presence was felt on the wind, like whispers from Dagobah's darkened swamp. Palpatine pressed forward, but his empire was not yet whole. Without Anakin, without Vader, the blade of his dominance was blunted, and when he turned to strike, the Force struck back. Anakin reappeared, not as Jedi. Not as Sith, but as a storm. He returned not to Coruscant, but to Mustafar, and there, upon the black sands, he faced Sidious. Padme found him there, and the battle that followed would never be recorded. Only the Force remembers. They say lightning fell from the sky like screams, that the earth opened and swallowed fire, that for a moment the dark side recoiled. Anakin did not win, but neither did Sidious. Both vanished in the clash. And Padme, broken yet alive, carried the last hope of the galaxy. Two children. One with eyes like fire, one with silence like the stars. The Jedi rebuilt not in temples, but in whispers. Not in Republic halls, but in caves, forests, deserts. A network of light Scattered but alive. Obi-Wan disappeared once more. A guardian, a watcher, and the galaxy. Changed. Without Vader, the Empire was born in blood, but ruled in fear without form. Without Skywalker, the legend of the Chosen One became myth, a tale told by dying Jedi, a secret held by a mother, a burden carried by twins. And so the question remains, what if Anakin and Obi-Wan didn't return to Coruscant? What if they defied the path written for them? What if, in walking away, they preserved the balance of the Force not by obedience, but by rebellion? The galaxy may never know, but the Force does, and it remembers everything. There are moments when the Force does not whisper, it shouts. Moments when time itself seems to pause, waiting for a decision that will shape all life. On the shattered bridge of the invisible hand, Anakin Skywalker stood at such a crossroads. Count Dooku's lifeless body sprawled before him, his final breath extinguished by a blade meant to protect. Palpatine, bound but smiling, urged Anakin to act with speed, to return, to report, to finish the mission. But something pulled at him. A silence deeper than war. A shadow that was not in front of him, but behind. He looked at Obi-Wan, unconscious, injured, but alive. The galaxy would expect them to return as heroes, but the Force was no longer in alignment with expectation. It screamed of deception, of futures twisted into ruin. Anakin couldn't explain it, not even to himself. So he acted on instinct. He lifted Obi-Wan and veered the ship into a hidden hyperspace route, one never meant to be taken again. Forgotten coordinate in Jedi archives, a place once visited by Qui-Gon Jinn in search of ancient truths. When Obi-Wan awoke hours later, he did not scold, did not question. He simply listened to Anakin's trembling voice, to the confusion in the Force, to the storm building on the edge of his brother's soul, and he believed him. For Obi-Wan, the Order had always been home, but for the first time, he saw the cracks in its foundation. Not because of war, not because of politics, but because they had become blind to something greater, something living within the Force that defied structure, tradition, and law. They reached a desolate moon, orbiting a dying star. There, among stone circles and silent winds, they made it. No commands, no legions, no wars. Only the Force. And the visions began. They saw the temple in flames, Mace Windu falling from a window, lightning still crackling through the air. They saw younglings hunted. They saw a masked figure, half man, half machine, marching through fire with a crimson blade. They saw Padme crying. Dying. And Anakin, in robes black as coal, standing above her grave. Obi-Wan's breath caught in his throat. The images came again and again, variations, echoes, all rooted in one thing: their return to Coruscant. That choice, that moment, was the fracture. The turning point of the age. But now, it had been delayed. Disrupted. The galaxy was still hurtling toward its doom, yes. But the current had shifted. By not returning, they had broken a loop. And in that break, there was opportunity. Not to fight, but to reveal. To uncover the shadow hiding within the Republic. To confront the lie that had masqueraded as peace. The Sith were no longer hidden in shadows. They were in plain sight, just behind smiles and Senate decrees. And so, Anakin and Obi-Wan made a vow not to wage war, but to seek truth. But truth, in the galaxy, is the most dangerous weapon of all. Coruscant littered beneath an artificial sky, unchanged on the surface, yet trembling at its core. The Chancellor returned alone, weary and wounded, claiming the Jedi had abandoned him after the battle. His voice, measured and careful, carried venom wrapped in silk. He praised Anakin publicly, but in private, he sowed suspicion. They hesitated. They fled. Something's not right. And to the Jedi Council, already worn thin by war, his words struck like poison through a cracked foundation. Whispers bloomed like mold in darkness. Why had Skywalker gone dark? Why had Kenobi noble, loyal, disciplined, disappeared without word? The Jedi had lost many during the war. But this felt like betrayal, and in that vacuum, Chancellor Palpatine took full advantage. His emergency powers remained unchallenged. Senate, eager for strength, tightened its grip on the outer rim. Freedom became a memory dot, and all the while, the Sith Lord played his final hand with flawless patience. Behind closed doors, he began his next campaign, one that required no droids, no generals, no separatists, only fear. Fear of collapse, fear of Jedi treachery, fear of a world without him. Meanwhile, the clones grew restless, deprived of their legendary generals. They obeyed orders, but the soul was gone. Without Anakin's daring, without Obi-Wan's honor, battles became machinery. Victories felt hollow. And yet, across the galaxy, in places where war had not yet reached, something began to stir. An old archivist on Jeddah claimed the Force was shifting. Mirielin Seer in exile spoke of a dream, two Jedi standing on the edge of a dying world, holding back darkness with only their presence. A merchant on Corellia reported seeing Padme Amidala cloaked in gray, asking questions no senator should dare ask. The Force was moving. Back on their desolate refuge, Anakin and Obi-Wan had found a cave. Within it, carvings older than the Republic, symbols matching Jedi teachings, and others that predated them. The language of balance. Not light, not dark, but the current beneath both. There, the truth became undeniable. The Jedi Order had not fallen yet, but it had lost its way. They had become warriors, politicians, disconnected from the will of the Force. Anakin clenched his fists. He thought of the Council. He thought of Ahsoka banished when she needed grace. He thought of Padme carrying his child, alone in a galaxy he no longer recognized. I was never meant to be a pawn, he whispered. Obi-Wan looked at him, not with judgment, but with understanding. You were meant to be more. And so, they made their decision. They would not return to the temple. They would expose the truth, whatever the cost. Not as Jedi. Not as fugitives, but as seekers of balance. But unknown to them, the dark side was watching. Sidious had not foreseen this fracture, and that made it dangerous. He would no longer wait for Anakin to come to him. He would bring the darkness to them. And the hourglass began to empty. In the cold, silent chambers of the Jedi Temple, Grandmaster Yoda sat unmoving, but within him, a stone. The Force no longer flowed as it once had. The harmony was gone. In its place, a churning dissonance, neither prophecy nor warning, but distortion. He reached out, he called into the currents that bind all living things, but there was no answer. Anakin Skywalker, Obi-Wan Kenobi, both were veiled from him. Not by distance nor death, but by choice. They had stepped into a path that the Jedi had long forgotten. The living Force, raw, untempered, now carried their essence, unbound by counsel or code. Yoda sensed what the others would not say aloud. The Jedi's center had shifted. The Force had diverted its river from the temple to the wilderness. Mace Windu, ever the blade of justice, called it treason. If Skywalker has gone rogue, he must be brought in. If Kenobi aids him, then he too has fallen. The council fractured. Some believed Anakin had been seduced by Dooku's whispers. Others suspected that the Chancellor was hiding truths behind his composed mask. But none dared speak what Yoda now saw clearly. The darkness wasn't coming. It was already here. And then, without warning, Padme returned. Not as a senator, not as a wife, but as a seeker. She stood before the council, her eyes filled with fire. They are alive, she said. They are trying to stop something. Something buried inside this republic. The room chilled. She did not give details. Only warnings. Whispers of a Sith Lord in the highest seat, a vision Anakin had shared with her in secret. But the council would not act. Bound by politics, paralyzed by fear. So Padme left, unseen by most. But not by Bail Organa, not by Mon Othma. In that moment, the first sparks of rebellion were born, not from blasters or banners, but from belief that the Jedi were no longer alone in their failure, that something monstrous had grown in the light. Unnoticed and far from Coruscant, Anakin and Obi-Wan stood before a hidden archive, its walls pulsing with ancient knowledge, a temple built not by Jedi, but by the ones who came before. In the dark, they found a prophecy not taught in the temple, not written by Jedi. Hands. It spoke of a twin flame, one born of chaos, one born of silence. Together, they would reset the balance, not by destroying the Sith, but by undoing the system that gave birth to them. Anakin fell to his knees. He felt it deep in his soul. The Jedi, the Sith, the Republic, all had become cycles of the same sickness. The prophecy was not a call to power. It was a call to end the war between extremes. And in that moment, Obi-Wan no longer saw his former Padawan. He saw the one who might finally understand, not the chosen one by Jedi definition, but the chosen one by the Force itself. And that made him more dangerous than ever. To Sidious, to the Council, to destiny itself, the galaxy had entered its quietest moment before the storm. Palpatine stood atop the highest tower on Coruscant, gazing down at the city world like a god surveying his fragile kingdom. His plan, years in the making, was unraveling. Anakin had not returned. Obi-Wan remained hidden. The final conversion of the Chosen One had slipped from his grasp. The pawns had fled the board. But he was no longer playing the game. Now, he would declare checkmate by force. Deep within the clone archives, Order 66 awaited activation. Not a suggestion, not a protocol. A kill switch bound to the DNA of every soldier bred for obedience. It was meant to coincide with Anakin's rise as Vader. But now, that future was shattered glass. Still, Palpatine would not be denied. The war escalated under his watchful eye. He summoned General Grievous to unleash fire across the mid-rim. Planets burned not out of necessity, but out of rage. He needed the galaxy afraid. He needed the Jedi isolated, and it worked. More systems surrendered their freedoms for the illusion of peace. Senators voted emergency measures they barely understood, and the Jedi were branded silent conspirators, all except one, Mace Windu, fueled by righteous fury. Windu began his own investigations. He trailed security logs, tracked unusual Senate activity, and what he found chilled him to the bone. Dozens of reports erased. Movements by the Chancellor obscured. Secret transmissions traced to Camino reprogramming updates hidden from the Jedi. And most damning of all, records of private meetings between Palpatine and Anakin, spanning years. Windu knew now. He didn't have proof, but he didn't need it. Sith were in the Republic. The Jedi could no longer wait. And across the stars, Anakin awoke from another nightmare. His hands trembled. He saw himself in black armor, breathing through machines. He saw Padme's tomb. He heard the voice of Sidious calling him son. Obi-Wan was already at his side. The visions are intensifying, he said quietly. Anakin nodded. They're not dreams, they're warnings. The temple they had discovered had revealed more than ancient symbols. It had shown Anakin the cost of becoming what the Council feared. It had shown Obi-Wan the cost of standing by while history repeated. And so, they prepared. They knew they could not walk into the temple as Jedi. They were no longer that, but they could not remain hidden either. Balance would not come from exile. It would come from intervention. Not with sabers, with truth. And while the darkness grew fat with power, the light had not been extinguished. It had simply gone silent, waiting for the moment it could return and strike like a blade across fate. The Force is not kind. It does not offer comfort. It offers only clarity, piercing, cold, undeniable. And now, it offered reckoning. Anakin and Obi-Wan emerged from the shadows on Polis Massa. the ancient outpost once used by Jedi healers and forgotten scholars. There, in the stillness of asteroids, they sent a message encrypted, incomplete, dangerous. It reached only a few. Master Yoda. Senator Organa. Pa-dm. Eacute. The words were simple. The Chancellor is the Sith. The Clone Wars are his design. Do not trust the Republic. No plan. No demand. Just truth. And truth, when spoken at the right time, becomes a weapon more deadly than any lightsaber. Padme received it first. She wept in silence, hands cradling her growing belly. Twins, Anakin's. Legacy fragile, powerful, and unguarded. The Council would not protect them. The Senate could not be trusted. So she turned away from politics. And toward rebellion, she met with Bail. With Mon, with the few who still believed in a republic without a throne. The rebellion was not born in battle. It was born in a mother's choice to defy silence. Meanwhile, on Coruscant, Master Windu could wait no longer. He approached the Chancellor's tower with 3 Jedi at his side. The skies roared above an omen. Inside, Palpatine waited. Not surprised, but smiling. He had expected Anakin to arrive. To save him. To strike down the traitors. To take his place at Sidious's side. But Skywalker did not come, and so the Sith revealed himself. The battle that followed shook the Senate itself. Jedi Masters felt a crimson lightning. And though Windu struck true his blade at Sidious's throat, the window shattered. And so did fate. But something changed. For the first time, the dark side hesitated. Not because of power, but because of absence. Anakin was not there to choose, and without his fall, Sidious was incomplete. Wounded, screaming, Sidious vanished into the depths of Coruscant's labyrinth. Not triumphant, but unfinished. And the clones? They received the order, execute Order 66. But something was wrong. It echoed. But it did not command. A fraction of battalions obeyed, but others paused. Some refused. The programming, meant to be absolute, now fractured without Skywalker to solidify. The narrative. Jedi died, but not all. Lightsabers lit forests and hangars. Some fell. Others disappeared into exile. Scarred but breathing. The Jedi Order survived. Not whole. Not strong, but present. And across the stars, Anakin felt the moment the galaxy turned. He stood in a ruined chamber of Force echoes, and for the first time, he wept, not in anger, but in clarity. This was what the prophecy meant. Not power. Not control, but sacrifice. To carry the weight of destiny, and refuse to let it crush others. He turned to Obi-Wan. It's time. And without fear, they prepared to face the Sith. Not as weapons, but as witnesses. The fire that once scorched the Jedi Temple had not yet been lit, but the embers had already been scattered. In the underworld of Coruscant, far from the Senate's grand towers and the Temple's ruined spires, rumors flowed like shadowed rivers. The Jedi seen fleeing in disguise, clone squads turning on commanders, and losing. And above it all, a name whispered not in reverence, but in fear. Kalan Skywalker. Not as a traitor, not as a savior. As something else. A ghost. Palpatine raged. His perfect storm was unraveling thread by thread. He had failed to forge his apprentice. In time, the Jedi still lingered like smoke in a cold wind. The Republic was cracking, but not yet crumbled. He needed to finish it, and so he summoned his final vengeance, not through Dooku, not through Maul, but through himself. Sidious disappeared from the public eye. The Senate was told of an assassination attempt. The Chancellor would recover soon, they said. But beneath Coruscant, in the black sanctum of the ancient Sith, he prepared for war. No more manipulation. No more masks. If Skywalker would not come to him, he would go to Skywalker. And on the molten world of Mustafar, where ancient Sith temples had once drained the Force itself from the stars, he set the trap. He sent a false signal, a coded plea from Padme, a cry of danger. Of betrayal. Anakin would feel it. He had to, and he did. The scream and the Force ripped through him. He saw Padme's face frightened. Alone, surrounded by shadows. It wasn't real, but real enough. He knew the place. Far.a. World of blood and stone. Obi-Wan placed a hand on his shoulder. This is it. Anakin nodded, but the storm behind his eyes had already begun to rise. They descended into the fires. Together. No council. No army. Only 2 Jedi. Walking into the belly of the beast. And waiting in the dark, beneath towering machines and seething lava, was the Sith Lord who had orchestrated it all. Darth Sidious, no longer the quiet serpent, but the roaring fire. The trap was set. The battle would begin, and the galaxy would never be the same. Mustafar did not welcome them. The world screamed beneath their feet, its rivers of molten rock pulsing like veins of fury. This place was ancient, cursed. A wound in the Force itself. The air was heavy with death. But the 2 Jedi walked without hesitation. They had seen this moment, felt it echoing through their visions. But now, it was real. And waiting, wrapped in shadows and seething power, stood Darth Sidious. He did not hide. He did not plead. He stood tall, cloaked in hatred, burning with contempt. "You were mine, Skywalker," he hissed. "You were the future." But Anakin's answer was silence, not defiance, not fear, only silence. Obi-Wan stepped forward, not as a warrior, but as a witness. "This ends here," he said. And the Force, as if holding its breath, collapsed into battle. Lightning danced. Lava exploded. Steel screamed as saber clashed with saber, blue and red painting the night in fire. Sidious moved like a storm of venom and fury. He was the culmination of 1,000 years of darkness, but something in him hesitated. Anakin was not falling. Obi-Wan was not breaking. Together, they fought not as master and apprentice, but as brothers united by truth. And then, a blinding flash. The temple exploded into flame, and when the fire settled, only ashes remained. No body. No blade. No emperor. The galaxy would search. It would wonder, but it would never know. For in that final clash, the Sith vanished. Some say he was destroyed. Others say he fled into the unknown regions, wounded, waiting. And Obi-Wan were never seen again. Not by the Senate. Not by the Order. Not even by Padme, but the Force remembered. Padme gave birth alone, among stars and silence. 2 children, one carrying the fire, the other the light. She named them Luke and Leia, and in their eyes she saw the legacy of the ones who vanished. She whispered to them, not of empires, but of choices, of men who could have ruled, but chose to serve, who could have fallen, but chose to walk away. The Jedi Temple was never rebuilt. Instead, scattered Jedi gathered in forgotten worlds, building a new path, one without the chains of dogma. Ahsoka found them. Cal Kestis. Others, 2 survivors, visionaries, believers. A new order, not of soldiers, but of balance keepers. And in time, the stories were told. Whispers of 2 Jedi who walked into fire and never returned. Legends say they still live, bound to the Force itself, watching, guiding, not as ghosts, not as gods, but as reminders that sometimes the most powerful act is to turn away from destiny, so others may choose their own. What if Anakin and Obi-Wan didn't return to Coruscant? Now you know, not just a question, a forgotten truth, a galaxy rewritten by the silence of 2 Jedi who chose not to follow, but to lead.